Imagine this. You're a professional tennis player. You've trained your whole life, sacrificed everything, earned your place on the court. And then one day, someone approaches you, not to coach you, not to sponsor you, but to corrupt you. They don't shout. They don't threaten. They just make an offer. Subtle, quiet, dangerous. Lose a set and no one will know. Now here's the twist. You don't say yes, but you don't say no either. You just stay silent. That silence is where this story begins. Because a German tennis player has now been banned for 12 months under the sport's anti-corruption rules. Not for fixing matches, but for failing to report a corrupt approach. And in modern tennis, that distinction matters a lot. Under the rules enforced by the International Tennis Integrity Agency, every player has a responsibility, not just to compete fairly, but to protect the integrity of the sport. That means if anyone approaches you with anything suspicious, a fix, a bribe, even a hint of manipulation, you must report it immediately. No delays, no hesitation, no silence. Because silence in this system is not neutral. It's dangerous. According to the findings, this player failed to report such an approach. And that single decision, not to act, not to speak, triggered a full investigation. Think about that for a second. No confirmed match fixing. No proven manipulation on the court. Just knowledge and silence. But in a sport where millions are wagered globally, where betting markets react to every serve and every break point, even information alone can shift outcomes. And that's why the rules are strict. Because corruption doesn't always start with action. Sometimes it starts with awareness and what you do with it. Or, in this case, what you don't do. For fans, it raises uncomfortable questions. How often does this happen? How many players have been approached? And more importantly, how many stayed quiet? Because if one player received an offer, it's unlikely they were the only one. That's what makes this case so unsettling. It's not about what we know. It's about what might still be hidden. Because in tennis, the biggest threat isn't always the player who cheats. It's the moment someone is given the opportunity and chooses not to speak. When one player stays silent, the damage doesn't stay contained. It spreads, quietly, invisibly. And in this case, the silence of a single German player has triggered something much bigger than a 12-month ban. Because once the International Tennis Integrity Agency confirmed that a corrupt approach had gone unreported, the focus shifted immediately, not just to the player, but to the environment around him. Who approached him? Was it a one-time incident or part of a wider operation? And most importantly, how many other players received similar offers and said nothing? That's the real danger. Because in modern tennis, corruption doesn't always explode into headlines. Sometimes it moves quietly through conversations, messages, and informal networks. A suggestion here, an offer there, a moment of hesitation. And if those moments go unreported, they create space. Space for patterns, space for systems, space for corruption to grow without resistance. That's why the rules enforced by the International Tennis Integrity Agency are so strict. Players aren't just competitors. They're first-line defenders of integrity. They are expected to report anything suspicious immediately because they are often the first and sometimes the only line of visibility. But here's the pressure no one talks about. Imagine being a lower-ranked player, traveling constantly, financially unstable, dependent on prize money and small sponsorships. Then someone approaches you, not aggressively, not illegally, at least not on the surface. Just a conversation, an offer disguised as opportunity. Now you're in a dilemma. Do you report it and risk attention, scrutiny, maybe even backlash? Or do you stay quiet and move on? That's where the system is tested. And in this case, the silence won. But once the investigation began, that silence became evidence. Because failing to report isn't seen as passive. It's seen as a breakdown in the system itself. And now, the ripple effect continues. Officials begin reviewing communication patterns, looking for similar behaviors. similar timelines, similar silence. Because corruption rarely exists in isolation. If one player was approached, there's a high probability others were too. And if multiple players stayed silent, then what we're looking at isn't just a single violation. It's a network of unreported moments. Moments that individually seem small, but collectively can undermine the integrity of an entire sport. Now the tension rises, because the question is no longer, what did this player do? It becomes, what else hasn't been reported yet? And in a sport built on trust, that question is far more dangerous than any single match-fixing scandal. Silence feels safe until someone starts asking questions. For the International Tennis Integrity Agency, this case didn't begin with a confession. It began with suspicion. In modern tennis, integrity officials don't just rely on reports from players. They monitor patterns, betting markets, unusual activity tied to matches, communication trails, small signals that don't look like much on their own. But together, they tell a story. At some point, something didn't add up. Maybe it was irregular betting patterns. Maybe it was intelligence from external sources. Or maybe it was a conversation that surfaced later. Whatever triggered it, the moment the ITIA began looking closer, the focus shifted to one key question. Was a corrupt approach made, and was it reported? That's where the investigation tightened. Because under tennis rules, the timeline matters. If a player is approached, they must report it immediately. Not later, not when it's convenient. Immediately. So investigators began reconstructing events. Who spoke to who? When did the contact happen? What was said? And most importantly, what wasn't reported? Unlike doping cases, this wasn't about blood samples or lab results. This was about communication, digital footprints, messages, call records, conversations that leave behind just enough trace to be pieced together. And in cases like this, the absence of action becomes evidence. Because if an approach is confirmed and no report exists, that gap becomes the violation. At some point, the ITIA established that a corrupt approach had indeed taken place, and that it had not been reported within the required time frame. That's the turning point, because once that is proven, intent becomes less important. Whether the player accepted or rejected the offer doesn't change the outcome. The rule is simple. You must report it, and failing to do so is enough. That's what makes this investigation so precise and so unforgiving. There's no need to prove a fixed match. No need to show altered results. Just one critical failure: silence. The player may have thought the moment would pass, that ignoring it was enough, that doing nothing meant doing no harm. But in the eyes of the system, doing nothing is exactly the problem. Because corruption doesn't always succeed through action. Sometimes it survives through inaction. And once investigators confirmed that silence had replaced responsibility, the case was effectively decided. Now, the process moved toward judgment, not based on speculation, not based on assumptions, but on a clear principle the sport refuses to compromise. If you know something, you must say something. And in this case, that didn't happen. When the decision finally came down, it was quiet. No dramatic press conference. No emotional apology. Just a ruling. A 12-month ban issued under the authority of the International Tennis Integrity Agency. On paper, it might not sound devastating. 1 year, not a lifetime ban, not a career-ending sentence. But in professional tennis, a year can change everything. Rankings drop, momentum disappears, opportunities vanish, and for a player already fighting to stay relevant, it can feel like the end. But the real weight of this punishment isn't just measured in time, it's measured in trust. Because this wasn't a case of physical cheating, no failed drug test, no proven match manipulation, just something far more subtle and far more uncomfortable: silence. And now that silence has a consequence. For the player, the fallout begins immediately. Tournaments are no longer an option. Training becomes isolated. Sponsors, if any existed, begin to distance themselves. And within the tennis community, a new label forms. Not cheater, not fixer, but something harder to define. Someone who knew and said nothing. That label carries weight, because in a sport built on individual responsibility, awareness comes with expectation. You're not just responsible for your performance. You're responsible for the integrity of the environment around you. And failing that responsibility, even passively, creates doubt. Doubt about judgment. Doubt about character. Doubt about what else might not have been said. For other players, the message is immediate and clear. The International Tennis Integrity Agency is not just watching results. It's watching behavior, decisions, reactions, and especially non-reactions. Because this ruling establishes something important. You don't have to break the rules directly to be punished by them. You just have to fail to protect them. That realization shifts the entire atmosphere of the sport. Locker room conversations change. Players become more cautious, more aware, more alert to anything that feels even slightly off. Because now they know, even silence is visible. Even silence can be investigated. Even silence can end your season. And that's what makes this moment so powerful. It's not just a punishment. It's a warning. A line drawn clearly across the sport. From this point forward, there is no ambiguity. If you are approached, you report it immediately. No exceptions. Because the next player who chooses silence won't just risk a ban. They'll risk becoming the next example. And in a system that's now actively looking for those examples, that risk has never been higher. In the end, this was a story about a match. No missed shots. No suspicious double faults. No obvious signs of manipulation on the court. Instead, it was about something far less visible and far more unsettling. A moment, a conversation, an approach that crossed the line, and a decision not to act. For the International Tennis Integrity Agency, the case is now closed. A 12-month ban has been issued. The rules have been enforced, and the message has been delivered. But for the sport itself, the story doesn't end here, because this case exposes a deeper truth about modern tennis. Corruption doesn't always look like corruption. It doesn't always show up in results, rankings, or highlights. Sometimes it exists quietly in what players hear, what they experience, and what they choose to ignore. That's what makes this case so important. It forces the sport to confront a reality that's easy to overlook. Integrity isn't just about what you do. It's about what you're willing to report. And that responsibility now sits heavily on every player, from top-ranked professionals to those fighting through qualifiers, because the system depends on them, not just to compete fairly, but to protect the game itself. And that's where the tension remains, because not every player feels equipped to handle that responsibility. Not every player feels safe reporting an approach. Not every player believes speaking up comes without consequences. And yet, the rules leave no room for hesitation. You must report immediately, no matter the circumstances. That gap between expectation and reality is where future cases will emerge. Because as long as corrupt approaches exist, and they do, there will always be moments of decision. Moments where a player must choose between comfort and responsibility, silence and action. And in those moments, the future of the sport is shaped. For this unnamed German player, that moment has already passed. The decision was made, the consequence delivered, the career paused. But the impact goes far beyond one individual. Because now every player watching this unfold understands something clearly. You don't have to take the deal to be part of the problem, and you don't have to cheat to face the consequences. All it takes is knowing and saying nothing.